The United States went into this war expecting a quick, decisive victory. That has not happened. Iran's Revolutionary Guard is still out there, still firing ballistic missiles and drones at American bases, at Israeli positions, at targets all across the Gulf. And they are not slowing down, not even a little. The warnings coming out of Tehran right now, they suggest things are only going to get worse from here. When the U.S. and Israel launched their offensive on February 28, the thinking in Washington was simple enough. Go in hard, go in fast, take out Iran's missile forces before they can do any real damage. Bloomberg recently called this conflict a clash with an adversary unlike anything the U.S. military has ever faced. And that is not just dramatic language. The overwhelming force approach that America has leaned on for decades, it has genuinely not worked here. The reason comes down to something Iran has been quietly building for years. They scattered their missiles and drones across dozens of hardened, hidden facilities all over the country. Think of it like a chess player who hides extra pieces in different corners of the board before the game even starts. You knock out a few of them, sure, but the rest are still sitting there, ready to go. Iranian military planners understood something a long time ago that Western analysts are only now openly admitting. If your weapons survive the first strike, you are still in the fight. That was always the plan. And right now, that plan is working. Here is where things get even more interesting. The Guardian reported on March 11 that U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff has gone to Iran twice now asking for a ceasefire. Two separate attempts, through different channels. Iran turned it down both times. Their reasoning is straightforward. Any pause in fighting just gives Washington time to regroup and come back harder. And honestly, looking at the history here, it is hard to argue with that logic. The U.S. launched hostilities on February 28 while negotiations were still actively happening. Israel's strikes that started on June 13, 2025, same thing. Right in the middle of talks. Iran has seen this twice now. They know exactly how this playbook runs. Then Ali Fadavi, a senior Revolutionary Guard officer, said something on March 11 that I keep coming back to. He said, since yesterday, Trump has been personally asking for a ceasefire. And if the enemy were winning this war, he would not be going around the world asking everyone to mediate. Then he added, the Americans should expect new surprises in the coming days. Now look, commanders on both sides say things for effect. That is just part of how wars work. But when you place those words right next to everything else that is happening on the ground right now, they do not come across as empty at all. The part of this story that I think deserves far more attention than it is getting, is what is happening to America's missile defense stockpile. Kelly Gricko, a senior researcher at the Stimson Center, described this as the first war where the opponent has such capabilities. That is a serious person, saying something very serious. And Mark Kanchan at the Center for Strategic and International Studies basically put the whole situation into one single question. Whose ammunition runs out first, our or Iran's? Because the numbers right now are not looking good for the American side. Analysts believe the U.S. and its partners fired more than 1,000 PAC-3 interceptors from the Patriot system in just the opening days of this war. Each one of those missiles costs somewhere between $3 and $4 million. The U.S. produces around 500 of them in an entire year. So in just the first few days, America may have burned through roughly 2 years of Patriot production. It is like spending your entire year's salary in the very first week of January and still having 11 months left to go. To keep up with the demand, the U.S. has been pulling Patriot and THAAD systems from military postings around the world, including South Korea, and rushing them over to the Middle East. But here is the problem. The U.S. did not walk into this war with full shelves. At the start of 2025, there were around 600 THAAD interceptors across all U.S. forces. More than 150 of those were already used up during under 12 days of fighting with Iran back in June 2025. And by July 2025, Patriot missile supplies had fallen all the way down to 25% of what the Pentagon considers the bare minimum they need. 25%. And then there is what is happening with America's Gulf partners, which barely gets mentioned anywhere. CBS News sources say Washington knows that several Arab Gulf states are critically short on anti-ballistic missiles, and almost nothing has been done about it. Middle East eye sources say the U.S. has been flat out turning down weapons requests from Gulf countries just trying to defend themselves from Iranian strikes. The most straightforward reason: the U.S. simply does not have enough left to hand out. Whatever interceptors remain are being held back for American and Israeli use. The Gulf states, they are being told to wait. So what has Iran actually accomplished on the ground so far? 17 U.S. military facilities confirmed hit since the war started. Hotels where American personnel were staying have been targeted too. There are clear signals pointing to significant U.S. casualties, though the exact numbers are being kept away from the public and have not been officially confirmed. Pentagon sources told the New York Times on March 11 that the strikes on the U.S. Navy 5th Fleet headquarters in Bahrain alone caused around $200 million in damage. Satellite images taken after the strikes on Ali Al Salem base in Kuwait show at least 6 structures connected to satellite communications were likely wiped out completely. But the most damaging thing Iran did happened in the very first week. They destroyed roughly $2.7 billion worth of radar systems, specifically the N/TPY-2 radars, the ones that THAAD completely depends on to do its job. The easiest way to understand what that means is this. Imagine you have a goalkeeper who is absolutely exceptional at stopping penalty kicks. But right before the shot is taken, someone puts a blindfold on him. He is still standing there. He is still capable, but he cannot see the ball coming. That is exactly what Iran did to THAAD. And that one move has seriously weakened missile defense all across the region. For U.S. forces, and for the Israeli anti-missile network both. The U.S. came into this expecting speed and force to settle things fast. What it has instead is a grinding war of attrition against an adversary that spent years building and preparing specifically for this kind of fight. Iran's missiles are still flying. American interceptor stocks are going down faster than they can be replaced. 2 ceasefire attempts have already been rejected, and the Revolutionary Guard is openly promising more is on the way. Where this actually ends up, nobody can say with real confidence right now. But the next few days are going to show whether either side still has room to maneuver, or whether this thing has already gone further than anyone can easily pull back from.